Hi everyone, and welcome to Tech Down Over. I'm Harold Muliati.
And I'm Jeff Blanchard, and welcome to this week's edition.
All right, let's get going. And we're back.
Well, it definitely wasn't surfing weather over here this week, so
yeah, you're in the middle
very
of
cold out
middle of winter. Still, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but then if you're a surfer, you don't really care. You put your wetsuit on, and you like winter better, bigger waves.
You were telling me a story one time where you were talking to someone about the seasons being reversed, and he was saying
yes.
that means you have Christmas, right?
That's right. Yes. Yes, I didn't sort of grasp that the Christmas is in summer. Well, hang on, it's not. It's yeah. Anyway.
That's when the Australian Jesus was born.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
But that's what I just don't understand. I think it would have been born in a hot climate anyway. It wouldn't have been.
Yeah, that's true.
Been snowing and all that. That's.
Yeah. So, I mean, in camera news recently, there have been, let's see, there's big picture, small cameras, and some other cool stuff. Recently, Sony announced the successor to the A7R III, which over here we had for a little while, but we ended up selling it as we didn't have a huge need for it. But it's their high resolution camera. It's and so the successor, the A7R4, it has like 10 more megapixels or something. It has 61 megapixels.
Well, actually, because the old one was 43, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, so it's like 18.
Yeah, it's 43 or 42 or 43. So it was, but I was wondering so what's the main difference with that? Is it that I've seen a few little reviews on it, but I don't know. Have they done much on the video side of it, or is it more on the photograph side of it?
It seems like they've mostly done on the photograph side of it. They haven't been pushing any of the video specs a whole lot compared to the photo. I did see a review that compared it to the Fujifilm GFX 50 medium format. The one that came before, the current one that's hot now is the GFX 100, but the GFX 50, and it actually held up pretty well against that. I mean, you still, with medium format, you get that thing where you get even more, you get an even shallower depth of field just because the sensor is big, and that's good for certain things.
Well, Sony's just done that, so it's got a bigger megapixel count than your camera now, Harold. That's one, so it makes you want to get a bigger, because yours only got 50 megapixels.
That's true.
What do you know about cameras? You got to get the new one.
I remember, because like one of the things I like to use my camera for is photographing art, like paintings and stuff like that, because there are certain things like to painters, the little details of the brush strokes that you need really high resolution to really capture if you get a picture of the whole thing, and most people don't care that much about it, but it's painting nerds are they like to see the little brush strokes. But I was calculating, like, for some of my bigger paintings, I was like, well, what's the upper end of resolution that I could use, and it was something like 300 megapixels or something. So I think it's still like it's a ways off before we get cameras that are really able to, like, there's no way I'll need any more resolution than that kind of thing.
But the thing is, the strange thing with the Sony one, everybody's been waiting for the A7S update, haven't they?
That's right, yeah.
And it's like, that would be the one that everybody would be clamoring out. But then out of the blue, I hadn't even heard of it. Then all of a sudden, I saw the A7R Mark III had been replaced by the Mark IV.
Yeah,
I thought, I was quite surprised.
I mean, the high resolution photo market. I mean, it's definitely. I guess it must be pretty big because all of the major camera companies are coming out with sort of comparable ones, but I don't think it's as huge as other parts of the market, like the hybrid camera, like the A7 S line would be, and like the
Mm.
GH5s and all that sort of thing. Those are, pr- I feel like those are what I hear about the most in the digital camera world, just because people want to do video and photo and have the convenience of having it both in one uh, package.
I like watching Casey Stern's thing on Video Conspiracy because he's all in the video and he's not doesn't care too much for the new Sony one because it's concentrating on those damn photographers
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
extra megapixels, and he says, "What do they know about tape? What do they know?" He's always giving him quite a rib about just doing it for photographers. But then again, that's the majority of the people who want it. But even me with video, I still like a nice camera that'll take good picture, because even with the
Yeah.
videos, still pictures really do well to put into your still videos. You can do that
hmm
really nicely. So
Although, really, just thinking about image quality, then, for example, the GH5S, which is a really
mm,
video-centric camera, people mainly get it as a video camera. Rick was taking some pictures with it. I should have put some so that I could have shown here, but
mhm.
it comes out with really nice pictures, and they get really nice dynamic range. They're only 12 megapixels, so they're not,
Mm.
they're obviously not huge pictures. But if you're showing them on the web or something, that's plenty enough. If you're showing them as a slideshow in a video, that's again plenty enough.
Well, it's a bit like when we all do. Well, Rick and I are both into the e-learning side of things, and when you're creating an e-learning module, you can go and get an image you want to put into an e-learning module, be 18 megabytes, and a decent sized picture that you want to do, and once save it as a lower format, and you get it down to about 1.5 megabytes
Uh-huh.
from 18. It's very hard to notice a difference,
Yeah.
but then but it makes the project go much, because if you've got 20 pictures at 18 20 megabytes, or 20 pictures at 1 megabyte a bit, it makes a big deal of difference. But people just want to put the biggest, but it doesn't seem to.
I mean,
I've tried and put the bigger megapixel one, but usually you don't see a lot of the difference for some of the things.
that's true because, yeah, a lot of the e-learning that we make, we end up having to make it, smaller than 1280 by
Hmm.
720 anyway, like, 955 by something, and then obviously you don't need big pictures. And again, on websites and stuff, you usually don't have, it's not even necessarily, like if you have a page you don't that has a full size photo, it might not even be like 1920 by 1080. It might be smaller, so it loads faster. So,
And it's a bit funny, like the same thing with video. If you put the, now that YouTube will take bigger files and that, people just put the greatest biggest one up. But a lot of the time, if it's yes, it is the best one, but people say, gee, that's a horrible looking picture. Yes, it is, because it's so big, the file's so big, it's cut it down to the lowest quality possible, so
yeah,
you can see it, and it looks like you're watching it through a drain or something, because and unless you wait 5 minutes for it to load. But people don't realize that and think that your video's horrible because they say, oh,
yeah.
that looks horrible.
And
They don't
if you have
realize it.
if you have like a picture or video that gets compressed that much, then yeah, it's
Yes.
high resolution, but it looks like the file has a skin disease.
Yeah, that's right. And most of the people that have will just say play the best thing on that. And I've tried other ones where you say don't show me that, but it still comes through like that. Because I know at first, when in the early days, I'd think, oh, what have I done? How have I saved that wrong? And I kept thinking I've done the wrong thing, but then it wasn't the file. It was just the speed trying to have a look at it on there. And also, if you watch it too quick, YouTube hasn't done its thing, so it's showing you it before it's finished doing it. And so it
Yeah.
shows you it hasn't rendered it properly for the higher quality yet. And I did that before and started deleting things on that. But so with the camera news, so Harold, have you looked more into the A7
Well,
Mark IV? That's Mark IV, isn't it? It's called.
yeah,
Is that
the
what
A7R
yes.
four. Another thing that's kind of, I think is kind of interesting about what they've released about the specs about of it is that it's 61 megapixels and it's a full frame sensor. It's so the sensor is 35.7 millimeters wide, and at 61 megapixels, I think it's 9,500 pixels wide, and that's actually it's getting to a point where it's almost going to hit the kind of diffraction limit of, well, actually, yeah, it depends on your aperture, but you can be hitting the diffraction limit so that the smallest physical possible like point that you can focus the light to at visible wavelengths, so like red, green, and blue, it's already getting to the point where like past f2.8, the smallest point you can focus a green light to or whatever. I think I checked for like 550 nanometers, and it's like the size of one pixel on the camera. So while you could push a full frame sensor to more than that and just cram in more pixels, you're kind of hitting a physical limit where you wouldn't be able to get better resolution anyway. Like it would just be blurry if you made it bigger than that. So I think it's kind of interesting that this camera is kind of hitting that sort of physical limit. Unless there's always the caveat of if the technology if the researchers come up with some exotic new technology to do something with light that we haven't even thought of yet.
I still have that feeling if you made any camera, no matter what the quality was, if it's exactly the same, but
Oh, looks like we've got a little connection issue here. But yeah, it's there. I guess it's coming to this point where we are coming across these limits in digital cameras in full frame that it's usually thought of only as sort of a smartphone thing, because smartphones having much smaller sensors, we do tend to have to come across this more where, because the sensors are less than a tenth of the size of a full frame sensor, then the pixels, we're trying to get these huge pixel dimensions out of camera phone sensors, but there's only so much you can get before it just starts being blurry because of the physical properties of the visible wavelengths of light. I think we're going to have to cut out some of this part because, yeah, unfortunately we've been having some connection issues here.
I must have said something that didn't like.
Yeah,
cut me
you angered the network gods.
I'll tell you a funny thing before I forget about that. I was talking to my cousin on the phone the other day, and she's living in Hong Kong at the moment.
Uh-huh. Oh no.
Can you hear me? I've come back. I haven't gone yet.
Yeah, it cut you out for a second there. So your cousin was living in Hong Kong.
Yeah, well, it did exactly the same. I was just asking. So I believe they've had some, local unrest and some riots there.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah. But the moment she started talking, and I asked that, the phone cut off. And in Chinese, and it says your call has been put on hold, and all in Chinese. And so they must have been listening, and they said, "Oh, they're mentioning the unrest," and cut us off. So we went on to WhatsApp because I said that was strange, but I thought they must be listening. So I just thought then before I said if no matter what the megapixel. Whatever the megapixels actually do, if you put out an 80 or 90 megapixel, whether it did anything or not, people would buy it by the ton because they've got a 90 megapixel. Even if it did a quality of a 12 megapixel picture, people wouldn't care. It's going back to the old days of hi-fi where, you had 60 watts RMS and you said, it's got 5,000 watts. I said, yes, but it's a bit like, I said, a train hooter going, how loud that is and ear piercing. That's loud, but it's not pleasant to listen to. Yes, it doesn't matter how loud it is. It's what it does. How do you hear the sound? It's the same with pictures.
Yeah.
Yes, it might have that, but it's how the camera processes it and what it's got in the first place. So,
And I
there's
guess
a lot
that
of
is slightly
factors.
apt because really, with a camera sensor, when you keep cramming more and more pixels into the sensor, then you get more noise because there's just more transistors per square millimeter or whatever, and it's just inevitably going to create more electronic noise, and then you can't shoot as much in low light, and you have to keep it to lower sensitivities. A lot of times they aren't image stabilized and stuff, so you have to have
Mm.
it on a tripod or something like that.
So did you see? Well, do you know what the price is for that new Sony one? I didn't sort of catch. I thought it was something about 5,500. Was it, or was that
Uh, I
right?
don't actually
Or
recall what it was.
yeah, so I just thought
I
I've stopped
think,
looking at those ones because they're just too expensive for my tastes. So.
yeah, I heard someone say it was about six, but I think, yeah, I think you're right. It's like 5,500 or something.
Mm. And lucky, I suppose at least all the other people have still got all the current lenses and that fit. So there's no special lens for it, is there? Or
Yeah.
things that old ones won't work. So they still go with the good G Master lenses and all that. They still work for it.
hmm Oh yeah. And speaking of lenses, there are more. I find it kind of odd that there's more and more cameras being released with this. They have that Leica L Mount alliance. For
Mm.
example, the Panasonic S1, it's doing the Leica L Mount, and actually Sigma has their new camera, the FP, and that's
Mm.
going to be using the Leica L Mount. So, you know, a lot of people are don't like that because one of the downsides is that Leica lenses are they're freaking expensive.
Mm.
But if everyone is, I guess if a lot of different camera manufacturers are going to use that mount, and Sigma, being a lens manufacturer, maybe they'll start making more lenses in that mount. Maybe it'll go down.
Well, that's right. That new camera, what was that? That FP, it didn't look. They said no matter how great the camera is, if they don't look that flashy, people like that looks a pretty plain sort of camera. Does that
It does.
FP?
For this one, I think it's something along the lines of that Blackmagic Pocket Cinema, where the
Mm.
idea is this is a full frame camera, but the idea is to have this very basic camera that gives cinema-like features, but in a less expensive and smaller package. And they do on the site, and in a lot of the promotional stuff, they show it with all kinds of stuff attached. So
All right.
they're I guess expecting you to put stuff on it rather than just use it kind of out of the box.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not meant to just hold it and take pictures. It's meant to put these things on. So, and when they're putting all these in these rigs, it doesn't matter how small the camera is, but you see, they've got a little camera, and then it's got all these things built onto it, all the
Yeah.
lights, all the mics, and all that. And you go, look at this huge lens; it's 3 foot out, and then there's just this little thing. Because really, that's what you said.
Some
Well, is
of
that what
some
all
of the
these big
setups
cameras
for that
have?
have so much stuff on them that it's almost like, where's the camera?
Mm.
It's
But
practically just a little box with a sensor.
But as I say, the people who get that, it's the professional people that it doesn't matter. It's because it's lighter. The whole thing would be better, but it's still sort of thing to be sat on a big tripod, or then you're hiring 3 people to carry it on a stabilizer, or drag it around. So
Yeah.
there'll be one person holding it up, but they have 2 at the side and one pushing it forward or something. So, I always used to think, gee, they're expensive, but when you see how much films cost them to make these days, you think, well, what they're not going to spend probably $1 million on equipment, and they spend hundreds of millions on anything else. And I said it's dirt cheap for them just to get the latest one, just to have the best one for that particular film and that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
that's
I assume this is more kind of targeted towards the, I guess you would call it mid-range movie maker, or someone, someone who's not quite amateur, but they're going towards professional, but they're still, sticking to slightly smaller budgets. That or just
yeah, because
oh, sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
because I was going to say, like the pocket camera, that's been very popular. But as I said, it's not much, but it's just a nice. It's just amazing what you can get out of that that little box. I think that's what gets people, is you put this big lens on this little box and just the quality that you do get out of it. But I'm still one, if it's video, I still like the format of a video camera, but or like the Canon one. But I think if you just do video and you don't mind, I still think for the battery capacity and all that, the video cameras are still better. There's still a lot of limitations in the ones that it's, they get, but there's just too many compromises. But anyway, there's people seem to put up with that, but I still like my video cameras too.
For holding a video camera and bringing it around the camcorder and other kind of video camera form factor, it's just designed for that. So probably these smaller cameras, they're going to be used more on tripods and other kinds of mounts and that kind of thing. Or I guess you could also have it in a big cage, and then that would also give you more to hold, kind of thing.
So anything else that struck you in the news that you like, that's new, that's come out this week?
I didn't have too much from this week, but one of the other things that I don't think we've talked about it too much, but one of the other things that I've been finding interesting recently is just there have been a few cameras that are these. There's this one camera, the Leica L16. I don't think they sell it anymore. I think they're developing a new one. I think it's a phone or something. But there are these cameras where they're trying to take a cell phone form factor and fit in something that can that at least they want it to be able to compete with kind of more, not necessarily professional grade digital cameras, but something like an APS-C or maybe even some of the full frames, where what they do is and you can see all these little mirror boxes in there. Basically what that's doing is they have larger lenses inside the camera, but they're horizontal, so they have these things where there's a mirror, and the light bounces off of that and then goes into the lens and goes into the sensor. So it has this one's the L16, and it has, I believe, 16 lenses and 16 sensors, and it uses software to kind of combine those and try to get a better image. Ramon Trotman, who we had on recently, he did a kind of this breakdown video of it, which I'll probably link in the description, because he explains it better than I do. But
yeah, I think he did that quite a while ago now, wasn't it? Because I think I saw that, and that's because that was quite a while back. But I thought quite a strange sort of camera that was.
Yeah, it's not too new, but it's I do think it's significant, this the increase in the amount of software and the use of not so much software, because we always had Photoshop and stuff like that, but onboard software on digital cameras and phones and stuff like that to dynamically do photo processing and stuff to try to get a better looking image, which I guess it's inevitable since we have more processing power on our phones and stuff like that, and cameras.
Well, I found some way the other week on how to test the processing power of my iMac and that, and I thought now I know a good benchmark to test it. I've been doing some dash cam footage and trying to get 4 hours worth of dash cam footage into the Mac. But not only that, but it had a front and rear camera thing, so 2 lots of the 4 hours to 8 hours, and then so get the footage in there. And then what I did was, then I put it together in a multicam clip, so I could do one to the other. And so the amount of hours it took to do that, and my machine was just nearly wanting to take off. I thought, gee, that's really taxing the processor on it, and it was all 4K as well. So,
right.
So I thought, oh well, that's one. If I'll know if I want to do that, because there you do the 4 hours, but you don't want the 4 hours, but you need to have it all there in the multicam so you can do it forward and back and do it on that. Because I found a restriction on the Mac. They have the dash cam with the The original one had the 32 gigabyte card in it, and you take the little micro SD card out, put it into the thing, put it into the Mac, it reads it fine. But then I thought, I want the 128 gig. I want that to record more because it didn't have enough time to do that. Put that into the Mac. Doesn't read it. No, because the maximum one is 64 for those ones in that format. Okay,
Right.
but if it's in the Mac format, yes, it will read it, but it won't work in the camera then. So what I have to do now is, luckily I have a Windows, I have to take the 128 gig card out of there, put it into the PC, transfer it over to the PC, which takes forever from a memory stick to the PC. Will take a while. Then I've got to put that onto a 128 gigabyte memory, just full size USB stick. And then that one will stick, that's formatted for the Mac. Then that one sticks into the Mac. And then I've got that. And wait, of course, when you get a 128 gigabyte stick to do a 128 gigabyte stick only has 112 gigabytes on it.
Yep.
So I thought, well, why don't let's just say, hey, it's 132 gigabytes, but it's only 120. You know,
I know, right? That always bugs me with the storage thing. They always cheat you by doing the whole, well, you know, we actually meant 1,000 bytes and 1,000 kilobytes and so on, rather than the actual 1024.
And I took off all the rubbish that they put on memory sticks, you know, all the software that they give you and all that. And there was still, you took it all off, but there was still, I thought, well, where's the, and so I had to cut some of the 128 off so I could load it in and then go get the rest of it and then load it back in. So anyway. Yeah. That's my little rant on little things, but that's what I'm doing, putting some footage together, because I did a trip the other week that was horrible, but I did some dash cam. I wanted to put a little video together. So you did get some
footage from the dash cam, so it's from that trip. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's right, because I didn't even take the camera out, but then, what's it, last week or the weekend, I had another one that did actually take the camera out, because the sun did actually come out and was a lot nicer. So I did that one and tried to put that together as well on that. So yeah. But I did also look on, there was a thing the other week in photography was Chelsea and Tony Northrop was talking about, you know, being fed up with the whole thing and sort of getting a bit down in doing the things and the photography side of it, and saying like everybody gets down. And they did say quite a good thing on there. One thing that pecked me up a little bit is say, you know, the number one thing is do your photography for yourself. Don't care. Don't think you have to do that to put it up on the site to get this perfect picture, because that's what gets people upset. Oh, I haven't done that. But say that you take pictures that you want and put on your thing that nobody's going to look at, but you don't care. And I think that's the thing. Do it for yourself first, because that's what we do it for in the first thing. It's just for fun.
I guess if you're doing it for yourself, maybe, well, I was going to say you won't procrastinate as much, but I don't think that's necessarily true. But I guess the pressure is different when you're not doing it because you...
and that's right. And if you do it for yourself, sometimes you get some of the best work. I know when I'm doing the things that I said to somebody the other day, it's the pressure that you're under sometimes. When I'm doing a voiceover recording, I can have a read out loud. I do it perfect. But the moment it's like, right now, right, that's it, record. And it's just this mental thing. If you just read out loud without the record on, it goes well. So I've got into the habit of just switching the recording on and doing that. Let's go read through it and then start. And then sometimes, I actually did it okay. But if you know, just do a big long recorder. But as soon as you say, I'm going to do this, you no matter what it is, even if it's just, you put yourself under pressure. Whereas
it's kind of like, you know, when someone's trying to smile for a picture, it's almost always going to look forced.
Well, I've known, there's a few people I've known, I feel like saying, don't smile, please.
Which is why... What I've seen is, you know, a lot of photographers don't tell people to smile, but then they'll like be kind of joking and being friendly, telling stories during the shoot. So people will they'll hear something that kind of tickles their funny bone or something, and they'll break into a smile or a grin, and then that's a natural smile.
It's just like a bit thing like with video as well. When if you're doing something that says, you get your talent in front of the camera and say, like, look, let's before we start, let's just have a bit of a practice. So will be the camera. Let's just practice.
Oh yeah.
Let's just run through the lines and then run through it. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Let's. Okay. Well, that will do. What? Oh, well, I was recording. But once you say 3, 2, 1, and said, but quite that's another thing. That's why the tally lights. It's good to be able to switch them off.
Yeah.
People don't know recording, so you just start it recording because people are a bit more relaxed than that. So I think we're going off subject a bit here anyway. So not into the technology. But why I was a bit late as well because coming on to the show, I was looking. We may talk about this the other way, the best voiceover microphone, and somebody was doing another microphone that I'd never heard of before, and I thought it looked very good. So what was it? The Harlan Hogan Signature Series. Have you heard of that one?
Harlan Hogan Signature Series. I haven't heard of that.
No, I hadn't, but I thought, and it sounded really nice, but I was just caught this, and I'd never heard of that one before, but they said, it's they're rating that as one of the best voiceover mics or something. So
wow.
The VO1A Harlan Hogan Signature Series. So
I've heard Harlan Hogan does have good mics for VO, but I haven't actually I haven't tried any of theirs.
No, but there's somebody trying it out. But the problem with them, it did sound fantastic, but his studio was perfectly set up. So I think one of these would just sound the perfect one, and he had a great voice as well. So it's like a bit like the cameras as well. You can have the best camera in the world, or you can have the cheapest camera in the world. But if you've got a bit of talent there and you know what you're doing, people won't notice you've got the cheapest one because it shows through the setup that you've done, the composure of the picture and all that. It's not just the equipment that you do have. Anyway, if we all did that, the industry would just drop, because if people only bought what they needed and suited them, I would still have the camera, my first, the first camera, and wouldn't have bought the last 6 of them, I think. So
yeah. And with that, anyway, I think we're just about at the end of our time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that got you thinking a little bit about the really big picture, the smaller picture with smaller cameras, and why it's important to keep cool and not, get real nervous and go because that doesn't really help much at all.
Well, people don't stand in front of cameras and do that anymore, do they? That's not the sort of the portrait. Well, you have the portrait, but you shouldn't be. It just makes me cringe when you see, people say, stand against it. And they're all like, no, you just get them looking at something, or, buying an ice cream or something like that, even there. But they don't stand up in front of things and just say,
exactly. Anyways, hold on to your dash cam footage, people. You might need it for benchmarking.
Yes,
have a good day, everyone.
Bye for now.
Bye for now, everyone, and see you next time on Tech Down Over.